So there I was, standing in the middle of my room, staring at the empty tin box where my college savings used to be. My name is Alara, and at 18, I thought I had a pretty clear picture of where my life was heading. I was wrong. The box, which had been tucked away under my bed, was supposed to hold the key to my future, a future I had painstakingly saved for by working late nights at the pharmacy. But instead of the comforting weight of cash, all I found was a single piece of paper. A note. It was cryptic, almost as if it was mocking me, for the brightest star in the family. I knew exactly who the note was referring to. Jasper, my younger brother, the prodigy, the golden boy. At 16, he was already hailed as the next great musical genius. I loved him, I really did. But sometimes it felt like I was living in his shadow, a shadow that seemed to stretch endlessly, consuming everything in its path, including my savings. I crumpled the note in my hand, my mind racing. The realization hit me like a cold splash of water. My mom, Marlene, must have taken the money. She was always so caught up in Jasper's potential, so blinded by her ambition for him that she couldn't see the damage she was doing. I needed air. I bolted out of the house, my feet carrying me to the one place where I could find some semblance of peace, my grandmother Evelyn's bakery. The smell of fresh bread and pastries greeted me as I walked in, a comforting contrast to the turmoil inside me. "Alara, honey, what's wrong?" Evelyn asked, looking up from the counter where she was arranging a tray of cookies. Her eyes, always so warm and understanding, seemed to see right through me. I just needed to get out of the house," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. But my hands were shaking, and Evelyn noticed. She set the tray down and came around the counter, pulling me into a hug. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" I nodded, taking a deep breath. "It's the money, Grandma. It's gone. I think Mom took it for Jasper." Evelyn sighed, a sound filled with both frustration and resignation. "Oh, Alara, I'm so sorry. Your mother, she means well, but sometimes she just loses sight of things." I pulled back, looking into her eyes. "I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm just invisible." "You're not invisible to me," Evelyn said softly. "And you're not invisible to yourself. Remember that." Her words were a balm to my wounded pride, but they didn't solve the problem. I needed to confront my mom, to get my money back somehow. But the thought of facing her, of having that conversation, filled me with dread. "Why don't you come work here at the bakery?" Evelyn suggested, a hopeful note in her voice. "It might help clear your mind, and you could use the extra cash." I considered it. Working with Evelyn had always been a haven for me, a place where I could forget about everything else. "Yeah, maybe I will," I said, managing a small smile. As I left the bakery, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to all of this. The note, the missing money, it all seemed to point to a bigger issue. A secret that was lurking beneath the surface of our family's carefully constructed facade. Back at home, I found my mom in the living room, her eyes glued to her phone as she managed Jasper's ever-growing list of engagements. My heart pounded in my chest, but I knew I had to talk to her. "Mom, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She looked up, distracted. "Can it wait, Alara? I'm in the middle of something important. More important than my future?" I shot back, the words sharper than I intended. That got her attention. She put down her phone, finally meeting my gaze. "What's this about?" "The money, Mom. My college savings. It's gone." Her face paled slightly, but she quickly masked it with a smile. "Oh, that. I meant to tell you, sweetheart. It's for Jasper's new instrument. It's an investment in his future." "And what about my future?" I asked, my voice breaking a little. "Alara, you're smart. You'll figure something out," she said dismissively, turning back to her phone. I stood there, feeling a mix of anger and hurt. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. As I walked away, I knew I had to dig deeper, to uncover whatever secrets my family was hiding, and I wouldn't stop until I found the truth. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of Jasper's violin echoing through the house. It was beautiful, haunting even, but it felt like a reminder of everything slipping through my fingers. I tried to shake off the feeling as I got ready for work, but it clung to me like a shadow. At the pharmacy, I found myself distracted, the events of the previous day replaying in my mind. I was grateful when Sienna, my best friend, popped in during her break from the coffee shop next door. "Hey, you look like you've seen a ghost," she said, leaning against the counter. "More like I've been haunted by my own family," I replied, trying to smile but failing miserably. Sienna raised an eyebrow, her curiosity piqued. "What's going on?" I glanced around to make sure no one was listening before I spilled everything. The missing money, the note, my mom's obsession with Jasper's career. Sienna listened quietly, her expression shifting from surprise to anger on my behalf. "That's messed up, Alara. What are you going to do?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. "But I feel like there's more to this than just the money." Sienna nodded, thoughtful. "Have you talked to your dad about it?" I shook my head. "He's always so busy with work, and even when he's home, it's like he's not really there, you know?" "Well, maybe it's time to change that," Sienna suggested. "He might surprise you." Her words stuck with me as I finished my shift. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to involve Dad, to see if he could help me figure out what was really going on. When I got home, the house was quiet. Jasper must have been out, and Mom was probably at one of her endless meetings or rehearsals with him. I found Dad in his office, hunched over his laptop, a stack of papers threatening to topple over beside him. "Dad," I said, knocking lightly on the doorframe. He looked up, blinking as if he was just waking up from a dream. "Alara, what's up?" I hesitated, suddenly unsure of how to start this conversation. "I need to talk to you about something important." He gestured for me to come in, closing his laptop. "Sure, what's on your mind?" I took a deep breath, diving in. "It's about the money I've been saving for college. It's gone, and I think Mom used it for Jasper's new instrument." Dad's expression shifted, a flicker of something, anger maybe, crossing his face. "She did what?" I found a note in the box. It was like she didn't even care that it was mine. He rubbed his temples, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. "I had no idea, Alara. I've been so caught up with work that I didn't notice what was happening at home." "Dad, there's more," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "I think Mom's hiding something." I found some papers in her office that didn't make sense. He frowned, his attention fully on me now. "What kind of papers?" "Financial stuff. Loans under your name." I didn't look too closely, but it seemed off. Dad's face went pale, and he stood up abruptly. "I need to see those papers." As he followed me to Mom's office, I felt a knot of guilt in my stomach. I didn't want to cause trouble, but I needed answers. We rifled through the drawers until we found the documents I'd seen. Dad's eyes scanned the pages, his expression growing darker with each line he read. "This is serious, Alara," he said finally, his voice low. "Your mother's been using my identity to secure these loans. If this gets out, it could ruin us." I felt a chill run down my spine. This was bigger than I'd imagined. "What do we do?" "I'll handle it," Dad said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. "But you need to stay out of it, okay? Let me talk to your mother." I nodded, but I knew I couldn't just sit back and wait. This was my future on the line, and I had to find a way to protect it. As I left the room, I felt a new resolve building inside me. I'd been invisible for too long, but not anymore. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the note again. It felt like a puzzle piece, one that didn't quite fit the picture I had of my family. There had to be more to this story, something that would explain why my mom was willing to risk everything for Jasper's career. I drifted off to sleep with a plan forming in my mind. Tomorrow, I'd start digging deeper, asking questions, and maybe even uncovering the truth about the mysterious note. Whatever it took, I'd get to the bottom of this. I had to. The next day, the air felt heavier as I walked into the house after my shift. I could sense the tension even before I opened the door. Dad had confronted Mom about the loans, and from the look on his face when I saw him in the kitchen, it hadn't gone well. "Alara, can we talk?" he asked, his voice strained. I nodded, my heart sinking. "What happened?" He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Your mother. She doesn't see what she's done as wrong. She thinks it's all for Jasper's future, and she's not willing to change course." "Did she admit to taking my money?" I asked, my anger bubbling up again. Dad hesitated, then nodded. "She did. She said she was going to replace it once Jasper's next concert paid off." I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound that echoed in the quiet kitchen. And what if it doesn't? That's what I asked her. We're in deep, Alara. Deeper than I realize. He paused, looking at me with a mix of regret and determination. I'm going to fix this, but I need you to be patient. I wanted to believe him, but patience wasn't something I had much of anymore. I needed an outlet, something to focus on besides the chaos at home. That's when I remembered the old piano in the attic, a relic from my grandmother's past. I climbed up there, dust motes dancing in the sunlight filtering through the small window. The piano was covered in a sheet, forgotten like so many things in our family. I pulled the cover off and sat down, my fingers brushing the keys. It felt like coming home, a piece of myself I hadn't realized was missing. As I played, the music flowed through me, a melody I didn't know I knew. It was like the notes were telling a story, one of pain and hope, of loss and redemption. It was my story, and for the first time, I felt like I was truly expressing what was inside me. Lost in the music, I didn't hear the footsteps until they were right behind me. I turned to see Jasper standing there, his eyes wide with surprise. I didn't know you could play, he said, a hint of awe in his voice. Neither did I replied, feeling a bit exposed. It's just something I picked up. He nodded, sitting down beside me. It sounds beautiful. You should play more. I shrugged, brushing off the compliment. It's just a hobby. Jasper was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I heard about the money. I'm sorry, Alara. I didn't know. His sincerity caught me off guard. It's not your fault, Jasper. You didn't ask for any of this. But I'm part of it, he insisted, his voice filled with a maturity I hadn't expected. I don't want to be the reason our family is falling apart. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw the pressure he was under. The weight of expectations, the burden of being the brightest star. In that moment, I realized we were both trapped in this cycle, victims of our parents' choices. Maybe we can figure it out together, I suggested, a tentative olive branch. Jasper nodded, a small smile breaking through his serious demeanor. Yeah, I'd like that. As we sat there, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe we could change things, find a way to balance his dreams with my own. But just as quickly, reality crashed back in. The financial mess, the secrets, the loans. It was all still there, looming over us. Later that evening, as I was heading to bed, I overheard Mom and Dad arguing in their room. Their voices were muffled, but I caught snippets of the conversation. You can't keep doing this, Marlene. It's not sustainable, Dad was saying, his tone pleading. I'm doing what's best for Jasper. Why can't you see that? Mom's voice was sharp, defensive. Because you're putting everything at risk. Our home, our future, Alara's future. There was a pause. Then Mom said something that chilled me to the bone. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made. Jasper is special, Graham. He deserves everything we can give him. I backed away, my heart pounding. Sacrifices. I knew then that I had to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't wait for them to sort it out. I needed to protect myself, my future, and maybe even Jasper's. The next morning, I called Sienna. I need your help, I said, my voice steady and determined. Anything, she replied without hesitation. I'm going to find out exactly what's going on with those loans. And I'm going to make sure I get my money back. With Sienna by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. It was time to dig deeper, to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I wouldn't be invisible anymore. The following morning, I woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. I had to confront the chaos head-on. As I got ready, I could hear the faint clinking of dishes from the kitchen, a sign that Mom was up. Steeling myself, I headed downstairs. Mom was at the table, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. Her face was a mask of calm, as if everything was perfectly normal. I hesitated in the doorway, unsure of how to start this conversation without igniting another argument. Good morning, Alara, she said, not looking up. Morning, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Can we talk? She finally glanced up, her expression unreadable. About what? About the money, the loans. Everything. Her eyes hardened slightly. I thought we already discussed this. No, you told me what you did. We didn't discuss it, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. She set her phone down, folding her hands on the table. What do you want me to say, Alara? I did what I thought was best. For Jasper, I shot back, the words escaping before I could stop them. For the family, she corrected, though even she didn't sound convinced. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my frustration in check. Mom, you're risking everything. Dad's identity, our home, my future. It's not just about Jasper. Her gaze wavered, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of doubt. But she shook it off, her resolve returning. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices for the greater good. I wanted to scream, to make her see how wrong this all was. But instead, I simply turned and walked away, knowing that words weren't enough. Later that day, I met up with Sienna at the bakery. Evelyn was in the back, and the smell of fresh pastries filled the air. Sienna was already at a table, her laptop open and a determined look on her face. I've been doing some digging, she said as I sat down. About those loans. I leaned in, eager for any information. What did you find? Well, they're definitely under your dad's name, but there's something weird. The amounts are inconsistent, like someone's been adjusting them after they were approved. That doesn't make sense, I said, frowning. Why would Mom do that? Sienna shrugged. Maybe she's trying to cover her tracks or keep the payments manageable. Either way, it's shady. As we talked, Evelyn joined us, wiping her hands on her apron. What's all this about? She asked, her voice gentle but curious. I filled her in, watching her expression shift from concern to something more complex. Oh, Alara, she said softly. I wish I could say I'm surprised, but your mother's always been ambitious. Ambitious enough to risk everything? I asked, my frustration bubbling over. Evelyn sighed, sitting down beside me. She loves you both in her own way, but sometimes love can blind you to the consequences. Her words lingered with me, even as I left the bakery. I felt torn between understanding and anger, between wanting to protect my family and needing to protect myself. As I walked home, I spotted Jasper sitting on the porch, his violin case beside him. He looked up as I approached, a hesitant smile on his face. Hey, he said, shifting over to make room for me. Hey, I replied, sitting down next to him. How was practice? He shrugged. The usual. Mom's got me booked for another recital next week. I nodded, unsure of what to say. The silence stretched between us, comfortable yet charged with unspoken words. I've been thinking, Jasper said finally, breaking the silence. About what you said. About us figuring this out together. I turned to him, surprised. Yeah. I don't want to be the reason you're unhappy, Alara. I want us both to have a future. His words hit me harder than I expected, a mix of relief and guilt. I want that too, Jasper. But it's not just about us. It's about Mom and Dad, and everything they're doing. He nodded, his expression thoughtful. Maybe we need to show them there's another way. That we can both succeed without tearing the family apart. I smiled, feeling a glimmer of hope. Maybe together we could change things. But just as quickly, doubt crept back in. The stakes were high, and the path ahead was uncertain. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the porch, I knew that the road to resolution wouldn't be easy. But with Jasper by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. We had to find a way to balance our dreams with the reality of our family struggles. And in the end, maybe we'd discover that the real sacrifice wasn't about giving up on our dreams, but finding a way to make them coexist. The tension in the house had become a living thing, lurking in every corner, whispering in every silence. I felt it pressing down on me as I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the application form for the music scholarship. It was a lifeline, a way out, but it was also a secret I had to keep from my family. Just as I was about to fill out the final section, Mom walked in, her presence instantly filling the room with an unspoken challenge. She glanced at the papers in front of me, her eyes narrowing slightly. What's that? She asked, trying to sound casual but failing. Just some school stuff, I replied, quickly covering the form with a textbook. She didn't press further, but her suspicion lingered in the air. You know, Alara, if you're planning anything, you should tell me. We're a family, after all. I forced a smile, the irony almost choking me. Of course, Mom. As she left the room, I felt a pang of guilt, but I couldn't let it deter me. I needed to do this for myself, for my future. I finished the application, sealed it in an envelope, and tucked it into my bag, determined to mail it on my way to work. Later, at the pharmacy, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something that would change everything. I was on edge, jumping every time the door chimed. Sienna noticed and nudged me with her elbow. "You okay?" she asked, concern in her voice. "Yeah, just everything feels like it's about to explode," I admitted, trying to keep my voice steady. "Well, if it does, you know I've got your back," she said, offering a reassuring smile. Her words were a comfort, but they didn't ease the knot in my stomach. As the day wore on, I found myself replaying my conversations with Jasper and Mom, trying to piece together what might come next. That evening, as I walked home, I decided to take a detour to the park. I needed to clear my head to find some clarity in the chaos. As I sat on a bench, watching the sun dip below the horizon, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Jasper. "We need to talk. Meet me at the old treehouse." The treehouse was our childhood sanctuary, a place where we'd shared secrets and dreams. I hadn't been there in years, but it felt fitting to meet Jasper there now, at a crossroads in our lives. When I arrived, Jasper was already there, pacing back and forth. He looked up as I approached, his expression serious. "What's going on?" I asked, climbing up to join him. He hesitated, then blurted out, "I overheard Mom talking to someone on the phone. She's planning to take out another loan, a big one." My heart sank. "Another loan? She can't keep doing this." "I know," he said, frustration in his voice. "But she's convinced it's the only way to keep everything afloat." I sat down, the weight of his words settling over me. "Jasper, we can't let her do this. It's going to ruin us." "I've been thinking," he said, his voice tentative. "Maybe I should quit. Stop playing at least for a while." The suggestion shocked me, and I could see the pain it caused him to even consider it. "You love music. You shouldn't have to give it up because of this." "But if it's hurting our family," he trailed off, his eyes filled with uncertainty. I shook my head, determination rising within me. "There has to be another way. We just need to find it." As we sat there, the old treehouse creaking gently in the breeze, I realized how much I had underestimated Jasper. He was willing to sacrifice his dreams for the sake of our family, and that made me more determined than ever to find a solution. The next day, I decided to take a risk. I approached Dad in his office, knowing this might be my only chance to make him see the truth. "Dad, we need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "What is it, Alara?" "I know about the new loan Mom's planning." "We can't let her do it," I said, my voice steady despite the fear churning inside me. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'm trying, Alara, but she's not listening." "Then we need to make her listen," I insisted, "before it's too late." He studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right, let's do this together." For the first time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could turn things around. But as I left his office, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. It was a photo of the scholarship application I'd mailed, with a single line, "You can't run from family." A chill ran down my spine. Someone was watching, someone who knew too much. The stakes had just been raised, and I knew that whatever came next, I had to be ready to face it. The message on my phone felt like a punch to the gut. Someone knew about my scholarship application, and the words, "You can't run from family," echoed in my mind, a chilling reminder of how trapped I was. I spent the night tossing and turning, my mind racing with possibilities. Who could have sent it? And why? The next morning, I was running on fumes, my nerves frayed and my patience thin. I needed answers, but I didn't know where to start. As I sat at the breakfast table, picking at my cereal, Mom breezed in, her usual air of confidence almost mocking in its obliviousness. "Alara, you look tired. Everything okay?" she asked, her tone almost genuine. "Just didn't sleep well," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "Well, you should get some rest. We've got a big weekend coming up with Jasper's recital," she said, her focus already shifting back to her phone. I nodded, fighting back the urge to confront her right then and there. But I knew it wouldn't get me anywhere. Instead, I decided to bide my time to gather more information before making my move. At work, I confided in Sienna, showing her the message. Her reaction was immediate and fierce. Alara, this is serious. You need to be careful. I know, but I can't just let it go. I need to find out who's behind this, I said, determination hardening my resolve. Maybe it's time to bring in the cavalry, she suggested, a hint of mischief in her eyes. I raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? Your grandma. She's got connections, right? Maybe she can help us dig a little deeper, Sienna proposed. The idea made sense, and I felt a flicker of hope. Evelyn had always been a source of strength and wisdom, and if anyone could help, it was her. That afternoon, I headed to the bakery, the familiar sense of sugar and cinnamon soothing my frayed nerves. Evelyn was in the back, kneading dough, her movements rhythmic and calming. "Grandma, can we talk?" I asked, leaning against the counter. She looked up, concern etched in her features. "Of course, dear. What's on your mind?" I showed her the message, watching her expression shift from surprise to anger. "This is unacceptable. Whoever sent this has no right to threaten you." "I don't know what to do," I admitted, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Evelyn wiped her hands on her apron, her eyes meeting mine with a steely determination. "We'll figure it out together. Let me make a few calls." As she stepped away, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. I was grateful for her support, but the unknown loomed large, a shadow I couldn't shake. The next day, I received a call from Evelyn. "Alara, I've found something. Can you come by the bakery?" I rushed over, my heart pounding with anticipation. When I arrived, Evelyn was waiting for me, a folder in her hands. "I had a friend look into the loans and the message," she said, handing me the folder. "It seems someone's been tampering with the records, and I think I know who." I opened the folder, my eyes scanning the documents. There, in black and white, was the name of someone I hadn't expected, our family's financial advisor, a man I'd known since childhood. Why would he do this? I asked, disbelief coloring my voice. Evelyn shook her head. "I'm not sure, but it seems he's been manipulating the loans for his own gain. And he's using the threat of exposure to keep you in line." The revelation hit me like a tidal wave, threatening to drown me in its wake. I felt betrayed, not just by the advisor, but by the entire situation. How had things spiraled so far out of control? As I sat there, grappling with the enormity of it all, Evelyn placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You're not alone in this, Alara. We'll get through it together." Her words were a balm, but they couldn't erase the fear gnawing at my insides. The stakes had never been higher, and I knew I was running out of time. Back at home, I found Jasper in the living room, his violin resting on his lap. He looked up as I entered, his eyes filled with concern. "Alara, what's going on?" "You've been on edge for days," he said, his voice gentle. I hesitated, then told him everything. The loans, the message, the advisor's betrayal. As I spoke, his expression shifted from confusion to anger. "We need to confront him," Jasper said, his voice firm. "He can't get away with this." I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision settle over me. It was time to take a stand, to fight for our family's future. But as I looked at Jasper, I couldn't shake the feeling that the battle ahead would test us in ways we couldn't yet imagine. Together, we steeled ourselves for what lay ahead, knowing that whatever happened, we would face it as a team. And as I prepared for the confrontation to come, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could find a way to reclaim our lives. The day of the family gathering arrived, and the air was thick with anticipation and unspoken tension. I felt like a tightly wound spring, ready to snap at any moment. Evelyn had insisted on hosting the event at her bakery, a neutral ground where everyone felt at ease. Or at least, that was the hope. As the family trickled in, I could feel the undercurrents of old grievances and unspoken truths swirling around us. Mom was in her element, flitting from person to person, her smile bright but her eyes betraying the strain beneath. Dad was quieter than usual, sticking close to Evelyn, who was bustling around with trays of pastries. Jasper was the last to arrive, his violin case slung over his shoulder. He caught my eye and gave me a small nod, a silent promise that we were in this together. As everyone settled into their seats, Evelyn stood up to make a toast, her voice warm and welcoming. "To family," she said, raising her glass. "May we always find strength in each other." The words hung in the air, a poignant reminder of why we were all here. But as the conversation resumed, I knew that the real reason for this gathering was about to unfold. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. It was time. "Excuse me, everyone," I said, standing up. The room quieted, all eyes turning to me. "I have something I need to share." Mom's smile faltered, a flicker of apprehension crossing her face. "Alara, what is it?" I hesitated, choosing my words carefully. "I've been keeping something from you all. Something important." Jasper stood up beside me, his presence a steadying force. "We both have." The room was silent, the tension palpable. I glanced at Jasper, and he gave me an encouraging nod. "I applied for a music scholarship," I said, my voice clear and unwavering. "I want to pursue my own dreams, just like Jasper." Mom's eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and disbelief. "Alara, why didn't you tell us?" "Because I didn't think you'd understand," I replied, my voice firm. "You've been so focused on Jasper that I felt invisible." The room was still, the weight of my words sinking in. But before anyone could respond, Jasper spoke up. "And I've decided to take a break from performing," he said, his voice steady. "I want to support Alara and figure out my own path." Mom looked between us, her expression a mix of confusion and hurt. "But Jasper, your career. It's important, but it's not everything," he interrupted gently. "I need to find a balance for all of us." As the implications of our decisions settled over the room, I saw Dad's face soften, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. Evelyn was smiling, her pride evident. But Mom was struggling, her composure slipping. "I just wanted what was best for you both," she said, her voice breaking. "We know, Mom," I said, stepping closer. "But we need to find our own way together." The room was quiet, the air thick with emotion. It was a turning point, a moment of reckoning for all of us. And then, unexpectedly, the door to the bakery swung open, and the financial advisor walked in, his face set in a smug smile. "I see I've arrived just in time." The room tensed, all eyes on him. I felt a surge of anger, but before I could speak, Evelyn stepped forward, her voice cool and authoritative. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her eyes flashing. He shrugged, his demeanor casual. "Just thought I'd check in on my investments." The implication was clear, and the room bristled with tension. But instead of backing down, I felt a surge of courage. "You've been manipulating our family for your own gain," I said, my voice steady. "But it ends now." He laughed, the sound grating. "And what do you plan to do about it?" Before I could respond, Jasper stepped forward, his expression fierce. "We're not afraid of you. We'll go to the authorities if we have to." The advisor's smile faltered, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. He hadn't expected us to stand up to him, to be united in our resolve. The room was silent, the tension thick. But in that moment, I felt a sense of clarity. We were stronger together, and no matter what came next, we would face it as a family. As the advisor turned and walked out, his bravado diminished. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. We had taken a stand, and it was just the beginning. The gathering slowly resumed, the atmosphere lighter, the bonds between us stronger. And as I looked around the room, I knew that we had reached a turning point, a chance to rebuild and redefine our family. Together, we would find a way forward, guided by love, resilience, and the courage to pursue our own dreams. In the weeks following the family gathering, the air in our home felt different, lighter, yet charged with the promise of change. The confrontation with the advisor had been a turning point, a catalyst that forced us to reassess our priorities and, more importantly, our relationships with one another. I found myself spending more time at the bakery, not just working but also playing the piano in the quiet hours. Music had become my sanctuary, a way to express everything I couldn't quite put into words. Evelyn often joined me, her presence a comforting reminder that I wasn't alone in this journey. One afternoon, as I played a melody that had been swirling in my mind, she sat beside me, listening intently. When I finished, she placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You have a gift, Alara," she said, her voice filled with pride. "Your grandfather would have been so proud." Her words warmed me, yet there was a lingering question I couldn't shake. Why didn't he pursue music? Evelyn sighed, a wistful smile on her lips. He did for a time, but he chose family over fame. It was a sacrifice, but one he never regretted. I nodded, understanding the weight of her words. It was a reminder that choices define us, and that sometimes the greatest sacrifices lead to the most profound fulfillment. At home, things were slowly mending. Dad had taken a more active role, working with Mom to untangle the financial mess and rebuild trust. It wasn't easy, but they were committed to making it work. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, Mom cleared her throat, drawing our attention. "I've decided to start therapy," she announced, her voice steady but vulnerable. "I need to work on myself for all of us." Her admission was met with silence, then a chorus of support. It was a step toward healing, a promise to do better. And it meant more than words could express. Jasper, too, was finding his way. He'd taken up teaching music to younger kids, discovering a joy in sharing his passion without the pressure of performance. It was a path that allowed him to grow, to explore his talent on his own terms. As for me, the scholarship application had been accepted, opening a door to a future I dared to dream of. It was a chance to pursue music, to carve out my own identity beyond the shadows of family expectations. One evening, as I packed for my move to the university, Jasper knocked on my door. "Got a minute?" I nodded, motioning for him to come in. He sat on the edge of the bed, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I'm proud of you, Alara," he said, his voice sincere. "For everything." "Thanks, Jasper," I replied, feeling a swell of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you." We sat in comfortable silence, the bond between us stronger than ever. It was a reminder that we were in this together, no matter where life took us. As I prepared to leave, Evelyn gave me a small wrapped package. "Open it when you get there," she said, a twinkle in her eye. When I finally settled into my new dorm room, I unwrapped the package to find a small, leather-bound journal. Inside, Evelyn had written a note, "For your music and for all the stories you have yet to tell." Her gift was a promise, a reminder that my journey was just beginning. And as I sat there, pen in hand, I realized that the story of my family was one of resilience, of finding strength in vulnerability and hope in the face of adversity. The resolution wasn't perfect. There were still challenges to face, wounds to heal, but we were moving forward together. And that was enough. As I began to write, the words flowed freely, a melody of their own. It was a story of love, of forgiveness, and of the courage to pursue one's dreams, no matter the cost. And as I closed the journal, I knew that the journey ahead would be filled with its own trials and triumphs. But I was ready, armed with the lessons of the past and the promise of the future. In the end, it wasn't about revenge or justice, but about finding peace within ourselves and with each other. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift of all.
"Anna, can you come here for a sec?" Alex's voice echoed from the living room, pulling me away from my sketches. I set down my pencil, rubbing my forehead. These wedding dress designs weren't going to finish themselves, but family first. In the living room, our kids, Mia and Lucas, were building a fort out of pillows and blankets, giggling like it was the best thing in the world. Alex, my husband of 10 years, looked up from his laptop, his eyes crinkling with that familiar smile. "Hey, love," I said, leaning in for a quick kiss. "What's up?" Alex's smile faltered a bit. "It's about my sister, Clara. Mom just called. Clara's getting married again." I raised an eyebrow. "Again? What's this, her 5th time?" Alex shrugged, looking a tad uncomfortable. "Yeah, 5th. Look, I know Clara can be, well, Clara, but she's still my sister." Clara, Alex's older sister, was a piece of work. At 42, she'd been married 4 times, each wedding more extravagant than the last. And her personality? Let's just say she could make a saint swear. She and I had never seen eye to eye. Her idea of a conversation was more like a one-sided barrage. I sighed, already feeling a headache coming on. So, what does this have to do with us? She's not expecting us to foot the bill for her wedding again, is she? No, nothing like that, Alex quickly assured. It's just, Well, Mom mentioned that Clara might want her wedding dress from your studio. I choked on my coffee. She wants what? Alex, you know how she treats me, and my work is not exactly bargain bin material. I have a reputation to maintain. Alex ran a hand through his hair, looking as if he'd rather be anywhere else. I know, but you also know how Mom is. She's hoping you'll do it as a favor. Family and all that. Family. That word always got me. I loved my in-laws. Truly, I did. They'd been nothing but kind and welcoming to me. But Clara? She was the thorn in my side, the lemon in my paper cut. Fine, I'll think about it, I said finally, my words clipped. But I'm not making any promises, especially not to Clara. Just then, the doorbell rang. I went to answer it, and there they were. Clara, in all her overbearing glory, and my mother-in-law, sweet as ever, but with that hopeful look in her eyes. Anna, darling, Clara's voice was like nails on a chalkboard. I just knew you'd be thrilled to make my wedding dress. It's going to be the event of the year after all. I forced a smile, holding back 100 sarcastic replies. Clara, what a surprise. Come in, let's talk about it. As they stepped inside, I braced myself. This was going to be one long, bumpy ride. The next day, Clara barged into my studio like she owned the place, her heels clicking loudly against the floor. My mother-in-law, Mrs. Thompson, trailed behind her, her expression apologetic. I put on my best professional smile, though inside, I was anything but pleased. Welcome to my studio, I greeted, gesturing around the room filled with mannequins draped in elegant fabrics. Let's talk about what you're looking for in a wedding dress. Clara didn't waste a second. I want something spectacular, Anna. This is my 5th wedding, and it has to top all the others. I'm thinking something bold, something that screams Clara. I nodded, trying to keep my tone neutral. Of course. Do you have any specific designs in mind? She waved her hand dismissively. You're the designer. Impress me. But remember, it needs to be grand. I want everyone's jaw to drop. Mrs. Thompson gave me a pleading look. I knew she was caught between her daughter's demands and her respect for my work. I sighed inwardly. Family peace was a delicate thing. All right, Clara, I'll come up with a few designs. But we need to discuss the budget and timeline. Custom wedding dresses require time and resources. Clara laughed, a sound that grated on my nerves. Oh, budget isn't an issue. Just make sure it's the best. And I need it in 2 months. That shouldn't be a problem for a professional like you, right? 2 months. That was pushing it, especially with my other clients. But before I could respond, Clara added another jab. And make sure it's better than what you usually do. This isn't just some run-of-the-mill wedding. It's mine. I bit back a sharp retort, reminding myself to stay professional. I'll do my best, Clara. Let's schedule a fitting session next week to take your measurements and discuss further details. As they left, Clara's parting words were, Remember, Anna, I expect nothing but the best. Don't disappoint me. Once they were gone, I slumped into my chair, feeling the weight of the task ahead. Designing a dress for Clara, who was as demanding as she was condescending, was going to be a real test of my patience. But I had promised Mrs. Thompson, and I wasn't one to back down from a challenge, no matter how unpleasant it might be. A week later, Clara strutted into my studio for her fitting session, her attitude as overbearing as ever. I had prepared several sketches, each showcasing a different style, but I had a feeling this was going to be more about Clara's ego than the dress itself. Here are the designs I've come up with, I said, spreading the sketches out on the table. I've considered several styles that could complement your personality and the occasion. Clara barely glanced at them, her nose wrinkling in disapproval. These are okay, I guess, but they're missing that wow factor. You know, something that makes people go, that's Clara. I took a deep breath. my patience wearing thin. How about this one? I pointed to a sketch of a bold, open-back dress. It's elegant yet daring, much like your personality. Clara peered at the sketch, then shrugged. It's fine, but it needs more pizzazz, and make sure it's white, pure white. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Clara, have you considered maybe a different color? Like blue, lavender, or even peach? Given that this isn't your first wedding, white might not be the most suitable choice. Her eyes flashed with anger. Are you kidding me? It's my wedding, and I'll wear white if I want to. It's traditional. Are you saying I can't pull off white? No, it's not about that, I tried to explain. It's just that white traditionally symbolizes… I don't care what it symbolizes, Clara snapped. I want white, and that's final. Are you going to make my dress or not? Seeing no point in arguing further, I nodded. All right, white it is. Let's talk about the budget. Given the details and work involved, especially on such short notice, the cost will be around $2,000. Clara's jaw dropped. $2,000? Are you out of your mind? I'm family. You should be giving me a discount, not ripping me off. I already factored in a family discount, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. The price is actually quite reasonable for a custom design and rushed order. Well, I'm not paying that much, she retorted. I thought you'd do it for free as a wedding gift or something. I was stunned. Clara, I can't just give away my work for free. There are costs involved, not to mention the time and effort of my team. Your team? Clara laughed mockingly. Please, it's just a dress. I'm sure you can whip it up in no time. And it's not like you're some big-name designer. I felt my cheeks flush with anger. My work has value, Clara. I'm sorry, but I can't just give you a dress for free. Clara stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Fine. I'll talk to Mom about this. She'll make you see sense. That evening, after a long day of wrestling with fabric and fending off Clara's demands, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Thompson, and her voice was laced with concern. I braced myself for what was to come. Anna, dear, I just had a talk with Clara, she began, her tone soft but heavy. She's really upset about the dress situation. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I know, Mrs. Thompson, but what she's asking for, it's a lot. Giving away a custom dress for free is a big ask. It's not just the cost, but the effort and time that goes into it. There was a pause, and I could almost picture Mrs. Thompson's kind face torn between her daughters. Anna, I know it's a big favor, but it would mean so much to the family, especially to Clara. It's her 5th wedding, and she wants it to be special. Her words hung in the air, and I felt the familiar tug at my heartstrings. Mrs. Thompson had always been like a second mother to me, and I hated letting her down. All right, Mrs. Thompson, I'll do it. I'll make the dress for Clara as my wedding gift to her. But I have one condition. She needs to respect my time and the process. No last-minute changes or unreasonable demands. Mrs. Thompson's relief was palpable, even through the phone. Oh, thank you, Anna. You have no idea how much this means to us. I'll talk to Clara, make sure she understands your conditions. I ended the call with a heavy heart. I knew I was walking into a storm, but for the sake of family harmony, I was willing to weather it. The next morning, Clara waltzed into my studio, a smug smile on her face. So, I heard you've come to your senses and agreed to make my dress for free. Smart move, she said, her tone bordering on condescending. I forced a smile, keeping my emotions in check. Yes, Clara. I'll make your dress as a wedding gift, but I need you to cooperate with me. No more unrealistic demands or last-minute changes. Deal? Clara rolled her eyes but nodded. Fine, fine. Just make sure it's the most stunning dress you've ever made. Remember, it's for Clara's big day. The following weeks were a blur of fabric, measurements, and constant alterations. Clara was proving to be as difficult a client as I had feared. Every fitting session felt like a battle, her demands growing more outlandish each time. "Anna, this isn't what I pictured at all," Clara exclaimed during one of her fittings, looking at herself in the mirror with a frown. "The neckline needs to be lower, much lower, and where's the wow factor I asked for?" I kept my voice calm, though inside I was anything but. "Clara, we've already adjusted the neckline twice. Any lower and it won't be appropriate. As for the wow factor, I've added the embellishments you requested." She huffed, turning this way and that in front of the mirror. "It's just not enough. I want people to be stunned, speechless even. Can't you add some more sparkle or something?" "Clara, there's only so much I can do without changing the entire design," I replied, trying to maintain a professional demeanor. "And we're running out of time. The wedding is in 3 weeks. "Well, you're the designer. You figure it out," she snapped. "Just make it happen. I have to look perfect." As she left the studio, I felt a knot of frustration in my stomach. Designing a dress was one thing. Dealing with Clara's constant dissatisfaction was another. But I was determined to see it through, if only to prove to myself that I could handle even the most challenging clients. The next fitting was no better. Clara walked in, her arms crossed and her expression sour. "This dress better be improved," she said, barely greeting me. I helped her into the dress, which I had painstakingly altered according to her last set of demands. I held my breath as she looked at herself in the mirror. "It's better, but it's still missing something," Clara decided after a long moment. "Maybe some more lace around the waist, and the train needs to be longer." "Clara, we're really tight on time," I reminded her gently. "Every change you request means more hours of work, and we need to make sure the dress is ready for your wedding day." She waved her hand dismissively. "Just do whatever you have to do. I need this dress to be perfect, remember? It's my day, and everything needs to be just right." A week before the wedding, I was stitching the last of the pearls onto Clara's dress when my phone buzzed. It was a call from my friend Lisa, who also happened to be friends with Clara. "Hey, Anna, just calling to chat about Clara's wedding. Can you believe it's almost here?" Lisa's voice was light, but I could sense something was off. "Yeah, it's been quite the journey with the dress," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. Lisa hesitated before speaking again. "So, I was looking over the guest list. I didn't see your name on it. There must be some mistake, right? You're the one making her dress, after all." My hand froze mid-stitch. "What? I'm not on the guest list?" "I double-checked, Anna. Your name's not there. I thought it was odd, given you're practically family." Anger and disbelief swirled inside me. After everything I'd done for Clara, she hadn't even bothered to invite me to the wedding? I'll look into it, Lisa. Thanks for letting me know," I managed to say before ending the call. My mind raced as I dialed Clara's number, my fingers trembling slightly. "Anna, what do you want? I'm busy with wedding stuff," Clara answered, her voice brusque. "Clara, I just found out I'm not on your wedding guest list. Surely this is some mistake." I tried to keep my voice steady. "Oh, that. No mistake. I didn't invite you," she said casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I was stunned into silence for a moment. "You didn't invite me? After I've been working day and night on your wedding dress?" Clara's laugh was cold. "Come on, Anna. You're just the dressmaker. Besides, it's not like we're friends. Why would I invite you?" I struggled to process her words. "But I'm your sister-in-law, and this dress, it's my gift to you. Gift or not, I don't want you at my wedding. You don't fit in with my guests, Anna. It's a high-class event, not some local craft fair." Her words stung like a slap. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "Fine, Clara. I hope your wedding goes as you wish." I hung up, feeling a mix of hurt and anger. I had put so much of myself into that dress, And this was how she repaid me? I felt foolish, naive, for thinking that maybe, just maybe, Clara would appreciate my gesture. But no, she was the same self-centered person she always had been, and I was the one left feeling like a fool. A few days before the wedding, as I put the final touches on Clara's dress, an idea began to form in my mind. If Clara thought she could use me and then toss me aside like an old rag, she had another thing coming. During the final fitting, Clara was her usual unpleasant self. "Make sure this is tight. I want to look stunning," she demanded, eyeing her reflection in the mirror. I forced a smile, nodding. "Of course, Clara. It'll be perfect." As she twirled in front of the mirror, I added, "There's just a small adjustment I need to make. It won't take long." Clara eyed me suspiciously. "What kind of adjustment?" "Just a minor tweak to the train. I want it to be absolutely perfect for you," I said, my voice dripping with feigned sweetness. "Hurry up then. And remember, you're bringing the dress to my place on the wedding day. I don't want any last-minute disasters," she ordered, her tone dismissive. The day of the wedding arrived, and with a devious smile, I packed up the dress, or rather, what Clara thought was the dress, and headed to her place. My husband, Alex, drove me, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. "Are you sure about this, Anna?" he asked, glancing over at me. "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied, my resolve steeling. We pulled up to Clara's house, and I could see the hustle and bustle of the wedding preparations through the open door. Taking a deep breath, I carried the box up to the front door, where Clara was waiting, her expression impatient. "It's about time," she snapped, snatching the box from my hands. "Now get out. You've done your part." I smiled, a real smile this time. "Enjoy your wedding, Clara." Alex and I turned to leave, and as we drove away, I couldn't help the feeling of triumph that bubbled inside me. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Clara, and she was absolutely livid. "What is this? Where's my dress?" I feigned innocence. "What do you mean? I gave you the dress." "This is a joke, right? This is just a piece of plain fabric. Where is my real dress?" She screeched into the phone. I let out a sigh, feigning regret. "Clara, that piece of fabric is what you deserved. After how you treated me, did you really think I'd let you walk all over me?" There was a stunned silence on the other end. Then Clara exploded. "You'll pay for this, Anna. You've ruined my wedding." The call ended, and I turned to Alex, who was looking at me with a mixture of shock and admiration. "Well, that's that," I said, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. An hour after the phone call, I was in my living room trying to relax when the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Clara standing there, her face red with rage, clutching the piece of fabric I had given her. Her mother and her fiancé were standing behind her, looking equally shocked but for different reasons. "You ruined my wedding!" Clara yelled, waving the fabric in my face. "How could you do this to me?" I crossed my arms, meeting her anger with calm. "I did exactly what you asked for, Clara. You got the dress you deserved." Her fiancé, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Clara, what's going on? Why are you holding a piece of fabric?" Clara turned to him, her face twisting with fury. This woman," she spat, pointing at me, "promised to make my wedding dress and then gives me this joke." Her fiancé looked at me, then back at Clara. "Is this true, Anna? Did you promise to make Clara's dress?" I nodded. I did. But Clara didn't invite me to her wedding, didn't pay for the dress, and treated me terribly throughout the whole process. This was my response. There was a moment of silence as her fiancé processed this. He then turned to Clara, his expression hardening. "Is it true you didn't invite Anna after she made your dress?" Clara's eyes darted around, realizing her situation was unraveling fast. "Well, it's not a big deal. She's just the dressmaker." Her fiancé shook his head, looking disappointed and angry. "Clara, this is not the person I thought I was marrying. I can't go through with this." He turned and walked away, leaving Clara standing there, speechless. Her mother, Mrs. Thompson, who had been quietly observing the scene, stepped forward. "Clara, I think you need to leave," she said softly but firmly. "Anna, I'm so sorry about all of this." Clara, now in tears, turned and ran off, her wedding dreams shattered. As they left, I closed the door, feeling a sense of closure. Alex, who had been watching from the hallway, came over and hugged me. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, leaning into his embrace. "Yeah, I'm okay. I just hope Clara learned something from all this." The rest of the day passed quietly. As I sat down in my studio later, I realized that sometimes standing up for yourself means making tough choices, but in the end, it's worth it.
I remember the first time I saw Mark. It was at a friend's birthday party. He was the center of attention, telling stories that made everyone laugh. I was mesmerized by his confidence. That's how it all started. Now, 3 years later, I'm sitting here in our small living room, 7 months pregnant, wondering where that charming man disappeared to. "Daisy, did you see my blue shirt?" Mark's voice breaks my train of thought. "It's in the closet, where it always is," I reply, trying to get comfortable on the couch. He walks into the room, fumbling with his tie. "I can't find it. Are you sure you didn't put it somewhere else?" I sigh, slowly standing up. "I'll get it for you." As I hand him the shirt, he gives me a quick, distracted smile. "Thanks, Daisy. I don't know what I'd do without you." There's a hint of the old Mark in that smile, but it fades quickly. He's always been a bit forgetful, a bit dependent, but since we got married, it's like he's a different person. He expects me to remember everything, to take care of everything, just like his mom did for him. His mother, Mrs. Thompson, calls almost every day. She's nice enough, but her constant checking in can be a bit much. "Daisy, dear, did you make sure Mark ate breakfast? You know how he gets when he's hungry," she would say. I used to find it endearing in a way, but now it's just another reminder of how much Mark relies on others. Mark is getting ready to leave for work, and I'm dreading another long day alone in the house. The baby kicks, and I place my hand on my belly, trying to find some comfort. "Mark, do you think you could come home early today?" "I'm feeling a bit off," I say, hoping for some company. He glances at his watch, already halfway out the door. "Sorry, Daisy. Big day at the office. You know how it is. Just rest up, okay?" And with that, he's gone. I sit back down, feeling the weight of loneliness. I wonder if this is how it's going to be from now on. Me, at home, waiting for Mark to find his way back to the man he used to be. I look around the room, at the life we've built, and can't help but feel like it's all just a charming illusion. The sun wasn't even fully up yet, and I could already hear the familiar ring of the phone. I knew who it was without even looking. "Morning, Daisy dear. Just checking in. Did Mark have his breakfast? And what about lunch? You know he doesn't like sandwiches." Mrs. Thompson's voice chirped through the receiver. I rubbed my temples, feeling the start of a headache. "Good morning, Mrs. Thompson. Yes, he had breakfast, and I've packed him pasta for lunch. He won't go hungry." "Oh, pasta again? You know, I always made sure he had a hot meal for lunch. Maybe you should try doing that. He loves my chicken casserole," she replied, her tone slightly critical. I gritted my teeth, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll keep that in mind." After the call, I made my way to the kitchen, feeling the baby kick. I leaned against the counter, thinking about how Mrs. Thompson always had a way of making me feel inadequate. I wasn't just competing with Mark's memories of her cooking, but with her constant presence in our life. The doorbell rang, pulling me out of my thoughts. I opened the door to find Mrs. Thompson herself, standing there with a bag of groceries. "Daisy, I brought you some things. I noticed you're running low on a few essentials," she said, pushing past me into the kitchen. I followed her, trying to mask my frustration. "Thank you, but you really didn't need to." "I don't mind, dear. And I noticed the house could use a bit of tidying up. You should be more careful, especially with the baby coming," she said, looking around with a critical eye. I felt a surge of anger. I'm doing my best, Mrs. Thompson. It's not easy being pregnant and managing the house all by myself. She clucked her tongue, unpacking the groceries. Well, when Mark was a child, I did everything without any help. It's all about managing your time better, dear. The rest of her visit went in a blur of unsolicited advice and thinly veiled criticisms. By the time she left, I was exhausted and more than a little resentful. Sitting alone in the now silent kitchen, I couldn't help but feel overshadowed by this woman who still held such a firm grip on her son. It was like I was living in a shadow, always trying to live up to an impossible standard. I knew something had to change, but right now, I felt too tired to even think about how to start. All I could do was sit there, feeling the weight of a mother's shadow over my life. As I maneuvered through the crowded aisles of the grocery store, each step felt heavier than the last. My back ached and my feet were swollen. I was halfway through my list when I realized I had forgotten bread. Turning back, I maneuvered past a sea of shopping carts, feeling a bit overwhelmed. Daisy, need a hand? It was Jim, Mark's dad, waving from the end of the aisle. His presence was like a breath of fresh air. I smiled, genuinely relieved. Jim, you're a lifesaver. I almost forgot the bread. We walked together, chatting about this and that. Jim had a way of making even mundane conversations feel comforting. As we reached the bread section, he joked, "Make sure it's whole grain. We've got to keep Mark away from that white bread fluff." I laughed, appreciating his lightheartedness. "I'll try, but you know how he is with his food preferences." Jim nodded, his expression turning a bit more serious. "Yeah, I do. He's always been a bit picky. Got that from his mother, I suppose." We moved towards the checkout, and I felt a sense of ease that was rare these days. Jim's presence was calming, a stark contrast to the constant tension I felt at home. "You know, Daisy," Jim began, as he helped me unload my cart. "I've been thinking, maybe Mark and his mom are a bit hard on you. You're doing everything while carrying a little one. It's not fair." I was taken aback by his frankness. I try to keep up, but it's hard, Jim. I feel like I'm always falling short of their expectations." Jim frowned. "You're doing more than enough. Don't let them tell you otherwise. You're carrying my grandchild, for heaven's sake." His words were like a balm to my weary soul. We finished checking out, and he insisted on helping me to the car. As he lifted a bag, he winced, his hand going to his lower back. "Jim, you're back," I began, concerned. He shrugged it off with a grin. "Ah, it acts up now and then. Nothing to worry about." But I could tell he was in pain. It pained me to see him strain himself for my sake. "You shouldn't be doing this, Jim. I can manage." He waved my concerns away. "Nonsense. Helping you is the least I can do. Besides, it keeps me active." We reached my car, and he carefully placed the bags in the trunk. "You head on home and rest. I'll have a talk with Mark and his mom. Things need to change." I thanked him, feeling a mix of gratitude and guilt. It was clear that Jim understood the dynamics at home better than anyone. As I drove away, I realized that without Jim, I would be truly alone in this struggle. His support meant the world to me, especially now. Back home, I put away the groceries, each item reminding me of Jim's kindness. His words echoed in my mind, giving me a sliver of hope. Perhaps, with his help, things could get better. Maybe, just maybe, Mark and his mother would start to see things from my perspective. But as the day wore on, and the house returned to its usual quiet, I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. Change was necessary, but it wouldn't come easy. I braced myself for the conversation that Jim would undoubtedly have with Mark and Mrs. Thompson. Whatever the outcome, I knew one thing for sure. Jim was my only ally in this, and I was grateful for him. The clock on the kitchen wall showed it was past midnight. The house was quiet, except for the occasional creaking of the floorboards. Mark wasn't home yet. His late nights were becoming more frequent, but tonight felt different. I tried to distract myself by tidying up, but my mind was racing. The sound of a car pulling up jolted me from my thoughts. I peeked through the window and saw Mark stumbling out of the car, clearly drunk. My heart sank. He fumbled with his keys at the door, cursing under his breath. When he finally managed to get inside, he looked at me with glazed eyes. "Mark, you're drunk," I said, my voice a mix of worry and frustration. He sneered. "Oh, now you're my mother? Keep your lectures to yourself, Daisy." I felt a knot in my stomach. "You promised you'd stop this. You know it's not good, especially now." He cut me off, his voice slurred but harsh. "Stop nagging me. I needed a break, okay? You don't know what it's like at work." I tried to reason with him. "But what about us, Mark? What about the baby?" He laughed, a cold, bitter sound. The baby. Is that all you can talk about? You used to be fun, Daisy. Now you're just boring." His words stung. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. "And look at you. You've become a fat cow. What happened to the woman I married?" He jeered. I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. They streamed down my face as I turned away from him. Mark staggered to the bedroom, leaving me standing there, broken and alone. I cried myself to sleep on the couch that night. The next morning, I woke up to find Mark had already left for work. My eyes were swollen from crying, and every part of me felt heavy. There was a knock on the door. It was Jim, looking concerned. "Daisy, are you all right? I saw Mark's car outside last night. I couldn't hide the truth. He came home drunk, Jim. He said things. Awful things." Jim's face hardened. "That boy has gone too far. I'm going to have a word with him." "No, Jim, please. It'll only make things worse," I pleaded. He sighed, his anger giving way to sadness. "You shouldn't have to go through this, Daisy, especially not now." I felt a mix of gratitude and despair. Jim was the only one who seemed to care, but I was starting to feel like there was no way out of this mess. The house felt like a prison, and I was trapped with my broken dreams and a husband who couldn't see past his own needs. As Jim left, he gave me a reassuring pat on the shoulder. "Hang in there, Daisy. We'll figure something out." But as I closed the door behind him, I wasn't so sure. The night had broken something inside me, and I didn't know if it could be fixed. Time seemed to slip away, and before I knew it, I was in the final stretch of my pregnancy. 9 months had flown by, and the reality of soon becoming a mother weighed heavily on me. I needed support more than ever. One evening, as Mark and I sat in our dimly lit living room, I mustered up the courage to ask him a question that had been on my mind for weeks. "Mark, my due date is approaching. I was thinking, maybe you could take some time off to be with me. To help out when the baby comes," I said, trying to sound hopeful. He barely looked up from his phone. "Time off? Now? Daisy, you know how busy I am at work. I can't just leave." I felt a pang of disappointment. "But this is important, Mark. It's our first child. I need you here." He sighed, his impatience growing. "You'll manage. Women do this all the time." His words stung, but before I could respond, he stood up. "Anyway, there's something else. Mom and we're going on a trip next week. She found this great package deal." I stared at him, disbelief and anger building inside me. "A trip? With your mother? But you just said you couldn't take time off." He shrugged, dismissive. "That's different. It's already planned and paid for. Mom's been looking forward to this." I couldn't contain my frustration. "So, a vacation with your mother is more important than being here for your wife and child?" Mark's tone hardened. "I don't need this, Daisy. It's just a week. Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" "A big deal? I'm about to give birth, Mark. I asked you for help, for support, and you're abandoning me for a holiday?" He rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed. "You're overreacting. It's not like I'm leaving forever. You'll be fine." I stood up, my voice shaking with anger. "Fine? You think I'll be fine? You're choosing a vacation over your family, over your child. Do you even care?" He grabbed his coat, ready to leave the room. "I'm not doing this now. You're being irrational. I'm going." I watched him walk away, my heart sinking. The man I married, the man who promised to be by my side, was leaving me alone at the most crucial time. And for what? A leisure trip with his mother. It was the day of Mark and his mother's departure. The house was a flurry of last-minute packing and hushed, excited chatter. I was in the kitchen, trying to keep myself busy, when I felt a sudden, sharp pain. My heart raced as I realized what was happening. My water had broken. Staggering into the living room, where Mark and his mother were grabbing their suitcases, I gasped, "Mark, my water broke. We need to go to the hospital." Mark glanced at me, his face a mask of annoyance. "Now? Daisy, we're about to leave. Can't it wait?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Wait? I'm in labor, Mark." He looked at his mother, then back at me, his decision clear. "I can't miss this flight. Mom's been looking forward to this." With that, he and his mother hurried out the door, leaving me alone, in pain and in shock. Panicking, I called Jim. "Jim, it's Daisy. The baby's coming, and Mark, he left." Jim's voice was a mix of anger and worry. "Left? That boy? I'm coming right now, Daisy. Hang in there." Minutes later, Jim arrived, his face flushed from rushing. He helped me into the car, despite his sciatica. "We'll get you to the hospital, Daisy. Just breathe." As we drove, my phone rang. It was Mark, his voice frantic. "Daisy, you have to send our documents to the airport. We forgot them because of your damn timing." I was in disbelief, struggling through a contraction. "Mark, I'm about to give birth. How can you think about your documents now?" He was relentless. "Just do it, Daisy. This is your fault. If you hadn't distracted us..." I hung up, tears of frustration and pain streaming down my face. Jim reached over, squeezing my hand. "Ignore him, Daisy. Just focus on yourself and the baby." We arrived at the hospital, and I was rushed into the delivery room. Jim stayed by my side, his presence a comforting contrast to Mark's absence. In those long, painful hours, I realized the stark truth about my marriage. Mark's priorities were clear, and they didn't include me or our child. But in the midst of that painful revelation, I found strength in Jim's unwavering support and in the knowledge that I wasn't completely alone. As I held my newborn son for the first time, a wave of love and determination washed over me. I knew then that my life was about to change dramatically, but looking into my son's eyes, I felt ready to face whatever came our way. The first few days with my newborn son were a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming emotions. I was still reeling from the shock of Mark's absence during the birth. Jim had been my rock, helping me through the initial days at the hospital and then at home. It was during one of those sleep-deprived mornings when Mark finally showed up, his mother in tow. The moment I saw them, my heart sank. "Mark, you're back," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah, well, the trip was a bust, thanks to you," he replied, his tone cold and accusatory. I held my son closer, trying to keep my composure. "Mark, this is your son. Don't you want to hold him?" He glanced at the baby, then away, his disinterest clear. "Sure, later. We need to talk about the mess you caused." His mother chimed in, her voice sharp. "You've been nothing but trouble, Daisy. You couldn't even manage to send simple documents." I felt a surge of anger. "I was giving birth, for heaven's sake. How could you both be so heartless?" Mark scoffed. "Heartless? You're the one who ruined our trip. You could have waited or called someone else." Jim, who had been silent until then, finally spoke up. "Mark, that's enough. You're talking nonsense. Daisy needed you, and you abandoned her." Mark turned to his father, defiant. "Oh, so now you're taking her side? She's turned you against me." Jim's expression was one of disappointment and anger. "It's not about sides, Mark. It's about doing the right thing. You failed Daisy and your son." The room was thick with tension, and I felt my son stir in my arms. "I can't believe this is happening," I said, my voice breaking. Mark's mother stepped forward, pointing a finger at me. "You've always been a problem, Daisy. I knew from the start you weren't right for our family." I looked at her, then at Mark, feeling a mix of sadness and resolve. "I may not have been what you wanted, but I tried. I tried for Mark, for our family. But it's clear now I was fighting a losing battle." Mark looked away, his expression unreadable. Jim put his hand on my shoulder, giving me a reassuring squeeze. "Daisy, you don't deserve this. You and your son deserve so much better." As I looked down at my baby, his innocent eyes staring back at me. I knew Jim was right. I couldn't raise my son in a home where his father resented his existence and where his grandmother saw me as an enemy. I need to think about the future, I said, more to myself than to anyone else in the room. Mark and his mother left shortly after, their departure leaving a cold silence in their wake. Jim stayed, helping me with the baby, his presence a reminder that not all hope was lost. In the weeks that followed, the house felt different, heavier, like the air was thick with unsaid things. I spent my days caring for my son, each smile and giggle from him a balm to my weary heart. But the shadow of the unresolved with Mark loomed over us. One afternoon, Jim came over, a serious look on his face. We sat in the living room, my son asleep in his crib. "Daisy, I've been thinking," Jim started, his voice heavy. "This situation, it's not right. You and the baby deserve better." I nodded, the weight of my decision clear in my mind. "I know, Jim, I can't stay in this marriage. It's not healthy for me or my son." Jim reached out, taking my hand. "I support you, Daisy. And there's more. I've decided to change my will. I'm setting up a trust fund for your son, my grandson. Mark, he's not the man I hoped he'd be." I was taken aback. "Jim, you don't have to do that." He shook his head firmly. "I do. It's the right thing. Mark needs to learn there are consequences for his actions." The next day, Mark and his mother came over. The tension was palpable. "Daisy, we need to talk," Mark said, avoiding eye contact. I stood my ground, holding my son. "There's not much to talk about, Mark. I've decided to file for divorce." His mother gasped. "Divorce? You're tearing this family apart," Jim intervened. "No, she's doing what's best for her and the baby, and I'm supporting her. Mark, I'm changing my will. Your son will be taken care of." Mark turned to his father, disbelief and anger in his eyes. "You're siding with her? Over your own son?" Jim's response was firm. "It's not about sides, Mark. It's about responsibility, something you've avoided." The room erupted into arguments, with Mark and his mother on one side and me, holding my son, on the other. Jim stood with me, his presence a steady force. In the end, Mark and his mother left, their parting words bitter and resentful. Jim stayed, helping me plan the next steps. As I filed the divorce papers, I felt a sense of liberation mixed with sadness. It wasn't the life I had envisioned, but it was a life where my son and I could be free of the toxicity that had engulfed us. Days turned into weeks, and the finality of the divorce brought a strange sense of peace. Jim was true to his word. The trust fund he set up for my son ensured our future was secure. And so I began to build a new life, one filled with hope and the laughter of my son. There were challenges, of course, but I faced them with a newfound strength. As I put my son to bed one night, I whispered a promise to him. "We're going to be okay, just you and me, a fresh start." And in the quiet of his room, with the soft sound of his breathing, I believed it. I never thought life could be so picture perfect. My name is Claire, and just 6 months ago, I married the love of my life, Alex. We're both 28, ambitious, and we've been together since college. We recently bought a cozy house in the suburbs, a place we could truly call our own. Alex works in finance, and I'm in marketing. We're the couple that has it all, or so it seemed. One evening, I was setting the table for dinner, waiting for Alex to come home. He'd been working late a lot lately. Just then, my younger sister Lily dropped by. She lives nearby with her husband, Mike. Lily's always been more than a sister to me. She's my confidant, my best friend. "Hey, Claire, dinner for two again?" Lily asked as she breezed into the kitchen. I forced a smile. "Yeah, Alex has been swamped at work, lots of late nights." She grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and sat at the kitchen island. "You worry too much, sis. Alex is just climbing that corporate ladder. You should be proud." I shrugged, pouring us both a glass of wine. "I guess you're right. It's just, he seems so distant lately." Lily sipped her wine, her brows furrowing a bit. "Distant how?" I sighed, picking at my salad. "He's just not himself. Short answers, always tired, and when he's home, it's like he's not really here. Lily reached across the table, giving my hand a reassuring squeeze. Work can be a beast. Give it some time. He's probably just stressed. Yeah, maybe. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease. The front door opened, and Alex walked in, looking tired but managing a smile. Hey, love. Hey, Lily. Lily waved. Hey, workaholic. You're missing out on your wife's amazing cooking. Alex chuckled, hanging his coat. I know, I'm the worst. Sorry, babe. Work's just crazy right now. I smiled weakly. It's okay. Dinner's ready. We sat down to eat, but the conversation was forced. Alex seemed a million miles away, lost in his thoughts. After dinner, he excused himself to make some calls for work. I cleaned up, feeling a knot of worry in my stomach. Lily watched me for a moment. Claire, don't let this get to you. He's just busy. It happens. I nodded, not entirely convinced. You're probably right. As I watched Alex talking on the phone from the living room, his expression serious and distant, I couldn't help but wonder if Lily was just trying to keep me from worrying. Little did I know, this was just the beginning. The weeks slipped by, and Alex's late nights became the new normal. It was a cold Tuesday evening, and I was sitting on the couch, staring at my phone. It was almost 10 p.m., and Alex wasn't home yet. My concern was turning into frustration. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was Lily. Hey, Claire, still up? Her voice was light, but I could hear the concern. Yeah, just waiting for Alex. He's late again. My voice sounded more annoyed than I intended. Lily was silent for a moment. Still at work? That's what he says, I replied, my tone skeptical. He's always got some excuse. Busy, meeting, you name it. Have you talked to him about it? I mean, really talked? I sighed, rubbing my temples. I've tried, Lil. It's like talking to a wall. He just brushes it off and says I'm worrying over nothing. There was a pause, and then Lily said, Maybe he's just under a lot of pressure. You know how his job is. I rolled my eyes, even though she couldn't see me. I know, but it's more than that. He's different, distant, and when he does talk, it's like he's annoyed with every question I ask. Look, Claire, don't work yourself up. Stress isn't good for you. Just try to talk to him again. Be direct. Tell him how you feel. Yeah, I'll try. I wasn't convinced it would change anything. When Alex finally came home that night, I was waiting for him in the living room. He looked exhausted, and my heart softened a bit, but I needed answers. Alex, we need to talk, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked surprised, but nodded, sitting down across from me. What's up? It's about these late nights at work and your trips. It's like you're not here even when you are. It's affecting us, our marriage. Alex ran a hand through his hair. Claire, I told you, work is just crazy right now. I'm trying to handle a lot. But that's just it, Alex. It's always work. You've changed. We barely talk, and when we do, it feels like you're miles away. He sighed, frustration evident in his voice. I'm doing this for us, for our future. Can't you see that? I'm under a lot of pressure. I get that, but it feels like you're pushing me away. I miss us, Alex, how we used to be. He stood up abruptly, his expression hardening. I don't have time for this right now, Claire. I'm tired and I have an early morning. And with that, he walked away, leaving me sitting there, feeling more alone than ever. I went to bed that night with a heavy heart, wondering if my marriage was as perfect as I once thought. The constant stress and worry had taken a toll on me. My health, which I'd always taken for granted, betrayed me. A sharp, unyielding pain in my stomach landed me in the hospital. As I lay in the sterile hospital bed, the reality of my situation began to sink in. 2 weeks of white walls, beeping machines, and too many doctors. Lily was my frequent visitor, always trying to lift my spirits. Hey sis, how are you feeling today? Her voice was a mix of concern and forced cheerfulness. I managed a weak smile. Been better, Lil. This place is getting to me. She sat down beside my bed, holding my hand. Alex been by? The question stung. No, he's busy as always. Lily frowned. That's not right, Claire. He should be here. I looked away, feeling a lump in my throat. I guess his work is more important. There was silence for a moment, and then Lily said firmly, No, Claire, you're important. You're his wife. He should be here for you. Her words were meant to be comforting, but they just made me feel more alone. I turned to face her, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what's happening to us, Lil. It's like he's not the man I married. Lily squeezed my hand. Give him time, Claire. Maybe he doesn't know how to handle this. Men can be clueless sometimes. But deep down, I knew it was more than cluelessness. Alex's absence spoke volumes, and the message was clear. I was in this alone. The day I was discharged from the hospital, Lily came to pick me up. Ready to get out of here? She asked, trying to sound upbeat. Yeah, can't wait to see home, I replied, though the thought of returning to an empty house wasn't exactly comforting. As we drove home, Lily kept the conversation light, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread about going back to a place that no longer felt like home. When we arrived, Lily helped me settle in. You need anything? Just call me, okay? I'm just a few minutes away. I nodded, feeling a mix of gratitude and sadness. Thanks, Lil. I appreciate it. She gave me a hug, a little tighter than usual. Take care, sis. And remember, I'm here for you. As I watched her leave, the reality of my situation hit me. My marriage was on the brink, and the only person I could rely on was my sister. The feeling of isolation in my own home was overwhelming, and for the first time, I began to accept that my life was changing, and not for the better. Back at home, the silence was deafening. Alex was still at work, or so he said. The house felt neglected, dusty and unkempt, a stark contrast to the neat home we once shared. I decided to distract myself by cleaning, starting with our bedroom. As I was vacuuming under the bed, something small and shiny caught my eye. It was an earring, a gold one with a red stone. Not mine, definitely. My heart raced as a realization hit me. It looked exactly like the pair Lily wore often. Later that evening, Alex came home. I confronted him, holding the earring out. Alex, what is this? Where did this come from? He glanced at the earring and then at me, his face unreadable. I don't know, Claire. Maybe it's one of yours? It's not mine. I've never seen it before. My voice was firm, but inside I was shaking. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. Maybe it's Lily's or one of your friends. I don't keep track of your jewelry, Claire. His dismissive tone infuriated me. You think I wouldn't recognize my own sister's earring? Or my friend's, for that matter? Alex's expression hardened. I don't know what you want me to say, Claire. It's just an earring. Maybe it got mixed up in our stuff when we moved in. I knew he was lying. The earring was too distinctive, too familiar. Don't treat me like I'm stupid, Alex. This is Lily's earring. How did it end up under our bed? He sighed, rubbing his forehead. Look, Claire, I'm tired. Can we not do this now? I've had a long day. But I couldn't let it go. No, we're going to talk about this now. This is serious. He looked at me, his eyes cold. I'm not having this conversation, Claire. You're blowing this out of proportion. With that, he walked away, leaving me standing there, the earring still in my hand. My mind was racing with thoughts. Was there something going on between Alex and Lily? No, it couldn't be. But the doubt had already planted itself in my mind. I couldn't sleep that night. The earring lay on my nightstand, a glaring symbol of betrayal. I recalled the looks exchanged between Alex and Lily, the times they were alone together. But I pushed those thoughts away. I couldn't accuse my sister and my husband without any proof. The next day, I called Lily. My voice was shaky as I asked, Lily, did you lose one of your earrings? A gold one with a red stone? There was a brief pause on the other end. No, why? Did you find one? Yeah, under our bed. I tried to sound casual, but my voice betrayed me. That's strange. It's not mine, though. Maybe it's one of your other friends. Her answer didn't convince me. I knew her too well. Okay, just thought I'd ask. We said our goodbyes, but the conversation left me more unsettled. I felt trapped in a web of lies, unable to find a way out. The earring was a piece of a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to complete. The possibility that my husband and my sister could betray me was too painful to consider. For now, I decided to keep my suspicions to myself, hoping that time would reveal the truth. The days following the earring discovery were filled with unease. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It wasn't just the earring anymore. It was the way Alex and Lily had been acting. I started to recall instances, little moments that I had brushed off before, looks they exchanged, whispers I couldn't quite catch. One evening, as I was sitting on the couch lost in thought, Alex announced another business trip. "I have to go to New York for a few days. Big project," he said, barely looking at me. I nodded, trying to appear indifferent. "When will you be back?" "In about a week. Don't wait up for me," he replied, his tone dismissive. After he left, I called Lily. I needed to talk, to see her reaction when I brought up Alex's trip. "Hey, Lily, Alex is off to New York for a week. Business as usual," I said, trying to sound casual. "Oh, really? That's a long trip," Lily responded, her voice faltering slightly. "Yeah, it is. Hey, I was thinking, we could spend this time together," I suggested, watching for her reaction. There was a pause. Then Lily replied, a bit too quickly, "I can't, Claire. I was planning to go see them next week. Already promised Mom." The coincidence struck me. Next week? When Alex is away? "It's okay. Some other time," I said, my mind racing with suspicions. We ended the call, but my thoughts were in turmoil. The timing was too convenient, too coincidental. I remembered how often Lily's visits to our parents aligned with Alex's business trips. It couldn't be just a coincidence. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. The pieces of the puzzle were slowly fitting together, forming a picture I didn't want to see. My husband and my sister, could they really be having an affair? The next day, I decided to take a more direct approach. I called Lily again. "Hey, Lily, I was thinking, since you're going to see Mom and Dad next week, why don't I come along? It'd be nice to spend some time together." Lily's response was immediate and a bit too sharp. "No, Claire, it's not a good time. They're busy, and I already have plans with them. Let's plan for another time." Her tone, her excuses, they didn't add up. "Are you sure? I really don't mind." "Claire," I said no. "It's just not a good time," Lily snapped, her voice tinged with irritation. The nagging suspicion about Alex and Lily wouldn't leave me. It was like a constant buzz in my head. One night, after Alex had fallen asleep, I made a decision that I never thought I'd have to. I crept quietly to his side of the bed and carefully picked up his phone. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it. I knew it was wrong, but I had to know. I went through his messages first. Nothing. Then his emails. Again, nothing out of the ordinary. But when I checked his browser history, I found it. A booking confirmation for a hotel in New York. For two. My heart sank. I put the phone back and went to the living room, trying to process everything. I felt betrayed, angry, and utterly heartbroken. How could they do this to me? To us? The next morning, Alex left for his trip as usual. "I'll call you when I land," he said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. I forced a smile. "Safe travels." After he left, I called Lily. I needed to hear her lie to me one more time. "Hey, Lily, I was thinking of coming over today. Maybe we could hang out?" There was a pause. Then she replied, her voice uneasy. "Actually, Claire, I'm heading out to Mom and Dad's today, remember?" "Right, of course," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Have a good trip then." "Yeah, thanks. We'll catch up when I get back," she said quickly and hung up. I sat there for a long time, feeling a mix of emotions. I was hurt, yes, but there was also a sense of clarity. I knew what I had to do next. It wasn't going to be easy, but I couldn't let them get away with this. That evening, I made an important call. It was a step I never imagined taking, but I needed solid proof. After the call, I sat in silence, a plan forming in my mind. I was going to confront them, but not yet. I needed undeniable proof first. And when I had it, they would have nowhere to hide. The week felt like a blur. Every day felt longer than the last, each minute dragging on as I awaited the inevitable truth. Finally, the call came. "We've got what you need," they said on the other end of the phone. After I hung up, a plan started forming in my head. I needed to confront them, but I wanted to do it my way, on my terms. A family dinner, that would be perfect. A place where they couldn't escape the truth. I called Alex first. "Hey, when you get back, I was thinking we could have a family dinner. It's been a while since we all got together." "Sure, sounds good," he replied, his voice casual. "When were you thinking?" "How about the day after you get back? I'll invite Lily and Mike too." "Great, I'll see you then." Next, I called Lily. "Hey, I'm planning a family dinner for when Alex gets back. You and Mike should come." Lily's voice was hesitant. "Sure, sounds nice. What's the occasion?" "Just felt like it's been too long since we all sat down together. See you then." The day of the dinner arrived. I cooked their favorite dishes, set the table perfectly, and waited. I felt a mix of nerves and determination. This was it, the moment of truth. Alex, Lily, and Mike arrived, all smiles and casual conversation. Dinner started off normally, everyone chatting and laughing, but I could barely eat, my stomach in knots. "So, what's the special occasion?" Alex asked, looking around. I took a deep breath. "I have an announcement to make." Everyone went quiet, looking at me with curiosity. "Before that, I have a question," I said, my voice steady. "Lily, how was your trip to Mom and Dad's?" "It was good, relaxing," she replied, a little too quickly. I nodded, then turned to Alex. "And your trip? Productive?" "Very," he said, nodding. I smiled, a cold, hard smile. "That's funny, because Mom and Dad said they haven't seen you in months, Lily. And Alex, the detective I hired, confirmed you weren't alone on your business trip." The room went silent. Alex and Lily's faces went pale, their eyes wide with shock. Mike turned to Lily, his voice filled with disbelief. "Lily, what's she talking about?" I pulled out the folder with the photos and threw them on the table. "That's what I'm talking about. My husband and my sister together." The photos scattered across the table, revealing the undeniable truth. Alex and Lily, holding hands, kissing. There was no denying it now. The rest of the evening was a blur of shouting, accusations, and tears. Mike stormed out with Lily trailing behind him, begging for forgiveness. Alex tried to explain, to apologize, but I was done listening. I watched them leave, my heart heavy, but my resolve strong. I had lost my husband and my sister, but I had gained something to my dignity and the strength to start over. Tomorrow, I would start the divorce proceedings. Tonight, though, I just sat in the silence of my home, the weight of the betrayal slowly lifting off my shoulders. The evening after the explosive dinner, I sat in my living room, the silence echoing around me. I had done it, exposed the painful truth. It was over, but the finality of it all left me feeling hollow. I was startled out of my thoughts by a knock at the door. It was Alex, his eyes red, a mix of anger and sorrow etched on his face. "Can I come in?" His voice was low, almost a whisper. I hesitated but nodded, stepping aside to let him enter. He stood there, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. "Claire, I don't even know where to start." "You don't have to," I said, my voice firm. "There's nothing you can say that will change what happened." He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you, but you have to believe me. It didn't mean anything." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Didn't mean anything? You had an affair with my sister, Alex. How could that not mean anything?" He flinched at my words. "I don't know how it happened. It was a mistake, a huge mistake. I love you, Claire." I shook my head, feeling a surge of anger. "Love? Is that what love looks like to you? Betrayal? Lies?" Alex took a step towards me, his hands outstretched. "Please, Claire, let's try to work this out. We can go to counseling, we can—" I cut him off, stepping back. "No, Alex, it's too late for that. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." He looked defeated, his shoulders slumping. "So that's it? We're just over?" I nodded, feeling a strange sense of calm. "Yes, that's it. We're over. I'll have my lawyer contact you about the divorce." He stood there for a moment longer, as if waiting for me to change my mind. But when I said nothing more, he turned and left, the door closing quietly behind him. I sat down, the finality of the situation sinking in. I had lost my husband and my sister, but I realized I had gained something too, my self-respect and a chance to rebuild my life on my terms. The next few days were a whirlwind of lawyers and paperwork, but I faced it all with a newfound strength. I was determined to come out of this stronger and wiser. In the end, I received most of the property and a fair settlement. It wasn't about the money or the house, though. It was about starting fresh, about reclaiming my life. I lost touch with Lily and Alex. The betrayal was too deep, the wounds too fresh. Maybe one day we could find a way to forgive, but that day was not today. I stood in my now quiet house, a mixture of sadness and hope in my heart. I had survived the storm, and now a new chapter of my life was beginning, one where I was in control, where I could find happiness on my own terms. As I looked around the room, I realized this wasn't just an end. It was a beginning of something new, something better. And with that thought, I stepped forward into my new life, ready for whatever came next. I'm Sarah, a 40-year-old mother of two, married to John, a kind-hearted man who's been my rock for the better part of 2 decades. Life's been a roller coaster, but I always say, it's the people in the cart with you that make the ride bearable. That was until my brother Tom decided to take the wheel. Tom's 8 years younger than me, a whirlwind of bad decisions and misplaced priorities. He's the kind of guy who thinks life owes him a living. Mom always said he'd grow out of it, but at 32, he's still the family's pet project. It was a Sunday, the kind that demands a family gathering at Mom's. Her house was our sanctuary, a place where childhood memories lived in every nook. As usual, John, the kids, and I were there, enjoying Mom's famous roast and her stories from a time we only knew through her eyes. That's when Tom burst in, like a storm no one predicted. The door banged against the wall, and in he strutted, a smug smile plastered on his face. He wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm was a young woman, barely out of her teens, her pregnant belly blatantly obvious in a dress that was, let's just say, more suited for a nightclub than a family lunch. John choked on his tea. Emily, my 12-year-old, asked if she was going to be an aunt. Max, the 8-year-old, was more interested in why Aunt Lisa's dress was so shiny. "Family, meet Lisa, my fiancée," Tom announced, as if he was unveiling a prize. Mom's fork dropped. "Fiancée? Tom, we talked about this." Lisa flipped her hair and shot us a look that could curdle milk. "Yeah, we're getting married. And this little guy," she patted her belly, "is Tom Jr." The room was so quiet, you could hear the clock ticking. John cleared his throat. "Congratulations, Tom. That's big news." Tom smirked. "We're staying here for a while. You know, till we get our own place." Mom tried to smile, but I saw the worry in her eyes. It was like watching someone set up camp at the edge of a cliff. That night, after the kids were in bed, John and I talked. "Sarah, your brother, he's not just irresponsible. He's taking advantage of your mom." I knew he was right. Tom was a tornado, and we were all in his path. The only question was, how much damage would he do before he moved on? The next few days were a blur of Tom and Lisa making themselves at home. Lisa turned the living room into her personal lounge, her feet constantly up on Mom's antique coffee table. Tom spent his days on his phone, laughing at things no one else found funny. Mom was running around, trying to keep up, making meals, cleaning up after them, never getting a thank you. It was like watching someone slowly deflate. One evening, I caught Mom in the kitchen, alone, looking older than her years. "Mom, you can't let them walk all over you." She sighed. "Sarah, he's my son, and that baby, I can't turn them away." I wanted to scream, to tell her she was being used, but I bit my tongue. Family's complicated, and sometimes love means turning a blind eye, even when you know you shouldn't. That's how it began, our new normal. Tom and Lisa, the ungrateful guests, and the rest of us, trying to keep the peace in a house that suddenly felt too small. Little did I know, this was just the calm before the storm. Living with Tom and Lisa turned our lives upside down. Every morning started with Lisa's loud complaints about her backache or her cravings. She'd stroll into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, demanding breakfast like she owned the place. "Sarah, make me some of those pancakes, will you? The baby's craving them," she'd say, not even a please in sight. I'd grit my teeth, trying to keep my cool. "Sure, Lisa, let me just get Emily and Max ready for school first." Tom was no help either. He'd be lounging on the couch, his feet up on the coffee table, glued to his laptop or gaming. "Hey, when's breakfast?" he'd yell, not even bothering to look up. Mom tried to play peacemaker. "Sarah, they're just young. Remember how we were?" I wasn't having it. "Mom, we never acted like entitled brats." But she'd just wave me off, scurrying to wait on them hand and foot. Things got worse as Lisa's due date approached. She'd leave a trail of mess wherever she went. Dishes piled up, laundry forgotten, and there she'd be, on the phone, gossiping for hours. One day, I snapped. I found her in the living room, her feet once again on the coffee table, talking loudly to a friend. "And then I told Tom we need a new car, something safe for the baby, you know?" I marched in. "Lisa, this isn't a hotel. You can't just expect everyone to clean up after you." She rolled her eyes. "Chill, Sarah. I'm pregnant, remember?" Tom finally chimed in. "Sarah, lay off her. Can't you see she's carrying my kid?" I shot back. "Being pregnant doesn't give you a free pass to be a slob, Tom." Mom came in, wringing her hands. "Please, let's not fight. It's not good for the baby." I looked at Mom, her face drawn and tired. "This isn't right, Mom. You're running yourself ragged for them." But Mom wouldn't listen. "They're family, Sarah. What can we do?" The days dragged on. Tom and Lisa would disappear for hours, leaving Mom to babysit their mess. They'd return with shopping bags, laughing about their day out. One evening, I heard them planning a lavish wedding. "We need the best, babe. It's our day," Tom said, his arm around Lisa. Lisa giggled. "Of course! And your mom can help with the expenses, right?" I couldn't believe my ears. I confronted them. "You're planning a wedding you can't afford and expecting Mom to foot the bill?" Tom shrugged. "Why not? She's got the money." I was livid. "You can't keep using Mom like your personal ATM, Tom." But my words fell on deaf ears. They just laughed and continued their planning, leaving me fuming. Life in Mom's house had gone from bad to unbearable. Lisa had given birth to a baby boy, Alex, and you'd think that would slow them down. But no, it only gave them more excuses. One morning, I walked into the kitchen to find Mom washing a mountain of dishes. Lisa was sprawled on the sofa, cooing at Alex, while Tom played some game on his phone. "Morning, Mom. Why are you doing all these dishes?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mom just sighed. "Lisa needs to rest, and Tom's busy." I glanced at Lisa. "Busy doing what?" "Lisa, you can't just leave everything to Mom." Lisa shot me a look. "I just had a baby, Sarah. I'm not supposed to stress myself." Tom didn't even look up. "Yeah, Sarah, back off. You don't know how hard it is." I couldn't believe it. "Hard? You call sitting on your butt all day hard?" Mom tried to calm things down. "It's okay, Sarah. I don't mind." But I was past caring. "No, it's not okay. You're not their servant." It was like talking to a wall. Tom and Lisa just didn't care. They'd leave the house for hours, leaving Mom to take care of Alex. They'd come back with bags of clothes and gadgets, bragging about their great deals. One day, I found a receipt on the table. A designer dress for Lisa, costing more than what most people make in a week. I confronted them. "Where did you get the money for this, Tom? And why is Mom paying for your lifestyle?" Tom shrugged, unbothered. "She's our mom, Sarah. She wants to help." I was furious. "Help? You're bleeding her dry." That's when Lisa chimed in, smirking. "If she's willing, why not? Besides, what's it to you?" I couldn't take it anymore. I had to talk to Mom alone. "Mom, you can't keep giving them money. They're using you." Mom just shook her head. I can't abandon them, Sarah, especially not Alex. I tried to reason with her, but they're not even trying to be responsible. Tom's not looking for a job, and Lisa's just spending your money like water. Mom looked away, her voice barely a whisper. I know, Sarah, but they're my children. I have to help them. I felt helpless, watching my family fall apart. Tom and Lisa were like leeches, draining everything and giving nothing back. And Mom, bless her heart, was too kind to see it. I didn't know how much more I could take. The breaking point was near, and I feared what would happen when we finally reached it. Things took a turn for the worse when Mom suddenly fell ill. It happened so fast. One day she was her usual self, and the next she was bedridden, looking frail and weak. I was at her bedside, holding her hand. Mom, you're going to get through this, I whispered, trying to sound more hopeful than I felt. She gave me a tired smile. I'm just worn out, Sarah. I've lived a good life. Tom and Lisa were nowhere to be seen, probably out spending more of Mom's money. I couldn't hide my anger anymore. Where are they, Mom? Why aren't they here helping? Mom's eyes were sad. They have their own lives, Sarah. Don't be too hard on them. But I couldn't let it go. Their own lives? They're living off you, Mom. And now, when you need them the most, they're absent. Mom just sighed. It broke my heart to see her like this, defeated and alone. Then, the inevitable happened. Mom passed away quietly one night, with me by her side. Tom and Lisa were out, probably having the time of their lives, oblivious to the tragedy unfolding at home. The funeral was a blur. I remember seeing Tom and Lisa arrive, looking like they were going to a party rather than mourning a loss. Lisa's dress was inappropriately short and flashy, even for a funeral. People were murmuring, and John squeezed my hand, trying to offer some comfort. After the service, Tom pulled me aside. Sarah, we need to talk about Mom's will. I was still in shock from losing Mom. Now? Can't this wait, Tom? He was insistent. No, it can't. I know she left the house to me. We need to sort this out. I couldn't believe his audacity. Tom, Mom just died. Can't you show a little respect? But Tom was relentless. This is important, Sarah. I'm her son. I deserve it. The day after the funeral, I went to Mom's house to start sorting through her things. But when I got there, Lisa answered the door with a smug look. What do you want, Sarah? She sneered. I was taken aback. I came to collect some of Mom's things. Lisa laughed, a cold, harsh sound. Oh, you didn't hear? This is our house now. Tom got everything. Tom appeared behind her, grinning. Yeah, Sarah. Mom changed her will. The house, the money, it's all mine. I felt a surge of anger and disbelief. You're lying. Mom would never do that. Tom shrugged. Believe what you want, but the will is clear. This is my house now. I stood there, on the doorstep of the house I grew up in, feeling like a stranger. The realization hit me hard. Not only had I lost my mother, but now I was losing my childhood home to my greedy brother and his manipulative wife. As I walked away, I knew this wasn't the end. I had to fight back, for Mom, for my family, and for what was right. But little did I know, the battle ahead would be tougher than anything I'd faced before. I was a bundle of nerves as I walked into the notary's office. The whole situation felt like a bad dream. Losing Mom was hard enough, but fighting with Tom over her will was something I never imagined. The notary, Mr. Jacobs, was an old family friend. He looked up as I entered, his face somber. Sarah, I'm sorry for your loss. Let's get straight to the matter at hand. I nodded, trying to steady my voice. Mr. Jacobs, Tom says Mom left everything to him. That can't be true. Mr. Jacobs shuffled some papers. Well, let's see what the will says. Tom and Lisa walked in just then, all smugness and arrogance. Lisa gave me a triumphant smirk. Ready to lose, Sarah? I ignored her, focusing on Mr. Jacobs. He cleared his throat and began reading the will. My heart was pounding in my chest. And to my son, Tom, I leave. I braced myself for the worst. But then, Mr. Jacobs said something that made my heart leap. The sum of $5,000. Tom's face fell. What? That's it? Mr. Jacobs continued. And to my daughter, Sarah, I leave the family home and the remainder of my estate. I couldn't believe it. Relief and disbelief washed over me. Lisa was furious. That's impossible. She promised us the house. Mr. Jacobs looked at them sternly. There's more. It appears your mother made this last will a month ago after expressing concerns about undue pressure from certain family members. Tom was red with anger. This is bullshit. She wanted me to have the house. I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Mom knew what you were doing, Tom. She knew you were using her. Tom turned to me, his eyes blazing. You did this. You turned her against me. Lisa chimed in, her voice shrill. We'll contest this. We'll get a lawyer. Mr. Jacobs raised an eyebrow. You're free to do so, but be aware, if it's found that there was any coercion involved in the previous will, there could be legal consequences. Tom and Lisa looked at each other, their confidence wavering. I stood up, feeling stronger than I had in months. Mom saw through your greed. She made sure her last wishes were respected. Tom stormed out, cursing under his breath, with Lisa trailing behind him. I stayed back, thanking Mr. Jacobs. As I left the office, I felt a mix of emotions. Sadness for losing Mom, relief that her last wishes were honored, and a lingering anger at Tom and Lisa's audacity. It was a regular afternoon when Tom stormed into the house, his face red with anger and disbelief. 100,000 for you and just a measly $5,000 for me? How is that fair, Sarah? I was sorting through some of Mom's papers, but his outburst made me pause. Tom, that's what Mom decided. You know she always had her reasons. He slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. Reasons? What reasons could she possibly have to screw me over like this? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool. Maybe because you and Lisa have been bleeding her dry for years? Tom's face contorted with rage. That's bullshit. We deserve that money. That's when I found it, tucked away in a drawer, a letter from Mom. Her handwriting was unmistakable. I pulled it out and started reading. Tom's eyes were fixed on me, a mix of curiosity and fear. What's that? It's from Mom, I said, my voice steady. She explains everything here. The letter laid it out in black and white. Mom had originally set aside 100,000 each for Tom and me, but as Tom and Lisa's demands for money grew, she started deducting from his share. I looked up at Tom, his face a picture of shock. By the time she wrote her last will, you'd already taken 95,000, Tom. There was only 5,000 left. Tom staggered back, as if he'd been physically hit. No, that can't be true. I felt a surge of anger. It's all here, Tom. Every cent you and Lisa took, it came out of your inheritance. He looked lost, his eyes darting around the room. But I didn't know. That's the problem, Tom. You never knew or cared to know, I snapped, my patience wearing thin. He slumped into a chair, burying his face in his hands. What have I done, Sarah? I put the letter down, feeling a mix of pity and frustration. You've only got yourself to blame, Tom. You chose this path. Tom left the house that day, a broken man. I watched him go, feeling a sense of justice, but also a deep sadness. Our family was torn apart, not just by grief, but by greed and ignorance. The house, once a battleground of family feuds, was now eerily quiet. Tom and Lisa had left, cutting off all contact with me. It was a relief and a curse, leaving me to wrestle with the aftermath of their chaos. As I sat in the living room, staring at the walls that had witnessed so much, my friend Jenna called. Sarah, have you heard about Tom? I braced myself. No, what now? She hesitated. He's been spotted around town, looking for jobs. And Lisa, she's been seen with different men, flaunting around like she's single. My heart sank. And Alex? Their son? No sign of him, Sarah. It's like they've forgotten they have a child. I slammed my fist on the table, fury boiling inside me. They're irresponsible, selfish. They don't deserve a child. Jenna tried to calm me. Sarah, maybe there's something you can do. Her words sparked an idea. You're right. I'll fight for Alex. He shouldn't suffer because of them. The next day, I met with a lawyer, a no-nonsense woman named Miss Rivera. I explained everything, my voice trembling with determination. "So, you want to pursue custody of your nephew?" Miss Rivera asked, her eyes sharp. I nodded firmly. "Yes, he's in a toxic environment. I want to give him a better life." Miss Rivera leaned forward. "It won't be easy, Sarah, but if you're ready to fight, I'm with you." I felt a surge of resolve. I'm ready, whatever it takes. The legal battle that followed was tough. Tom and Lisa were unpredictable, sometimes cooperative, sometimes hostile. But I didn't back down. One evening, after a particularly grueling day in court, John wrapped his arms around me. "You're doing the right thing, Sarah. It's hard, but right." I leaned into his embrace, exhausted but hopeful. I just want Alex to be safe, to have a family that cares. The day the judge granted me temporary custody of Alex was bittersweet. He was a sweet boy, confused and scared, but he slowly opened up to us. Emily and Max adored him, and he brought a new kind of joy into our home. Tom's reaction was a mix of anger and defeat. "You've taken everything from me, Sarah." I faced him, my voice unwavering. "I'm protecting Alex, something you should have done." As Tom stormed off, I realized our relationship might never be repaired. But this wasn't about us. It was about a little boy who needed a stable home. Life with Alex was a new adventure. There were challenges, of course, but also laughter and love. He was becoming a part of our family, and I was determined to make it permanent. Looking back, I knew I'd made the right decision. It was time for new beginnings, for all of us. A chance to heal, to grow, and to build a future filled with love and stability. That was the legacy I wanted to leave, a stark contrast to the selfishness and greed that had once threatened to tear us apart. The house, once a reminder of familial discord, was now filled with laughter and the pitter-patter of little feet. Alex had become a part of our lives, his presence a constant source of joy and wonder. One evening, as we were tucking him into bed, he looked up at me with those big, innocent eyes. "Aunt Sarah, am I going to stay here forever?" I smoothed his hair, my heart swelling. "Yes, Alex, you're part of our family now." He smiled, his tiny hand gripping mine. "I like it here. Emily and Max are fun." I kissed his forehead. "We love having you here, sweetie." As I walked out of his room, John was waiting, a proud smile on his face. "He's really settling in, isn't he?" I nodded, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "He is. We're giving him the life he deserves." The next day, I received a call from Miss Rivera. "Sarah, it's official. The court has granted you full custody of Alex." I nearly dropped the phone, tears of happiness welling up. "Thank you, Miss Rivera. Thank you for everything." After hanging up, I shared the news with the family. Emily and Max cheered, hugging Alex in a group embrace. Even John had tears in his eyes. "We're a family," John said, his voice choked with emotion. A real, complete family. The journey had been long and fraught with challenges, but we had come out stronger. I thought about Tom and Lisa wherever they were. I hoped they would find their way, but my focus was now on the children, our family. In the months that followed, Alex blossomed. He was no longer the timid boy we first met. He was confident, happy, and loved. One day, while we were all in the garden, Alex came running up to me, a dandelion in his hand. "Look, Aunt Sarah, I made a wish." I crouched down to his level. "And what did you wish for?" He grinned, his eyes sparkling. "I wished we'd all be together forever." I hugged him tight. "That's the best wish, Alex, and it's come true." As I looked around at my family, I felt a deep sense of peace. We had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. Our future was filled with hope, love, and the promise of new beginnings. This was our story, a testament to the strength of family and the power of love. It was a future of hope, and we were ready to embrace it with open arms.